Now I'm going to present how to test the service layer. So we have the service layer here, and I want to test it. So basically, on top of it, I have a service test layer. And basically the goal, we don't want to repeat tests because at the end tests are to maintain as well. So here we have already tested the invariants. So if in the services I don't change nothing related with the invariants implementation, I don't need to test it again. Okay? So the service layer is going to invoke this. We are not going to use mocks anymore. So basically the service layer invokes the real objects. But what we need to test is what is new. And basically what is new here. So if I look at the code and remembering what we have done, so this is our service, okay? And you actually create here the activity. What is new basically is these verifications. So verification is the input, the quality of the input, verifying that these user IDs basically correspond to a user that exists in the database. Verifying that the teams exist in the database, because if that's not the case, we are going to throw an exception. That's what we are going to test. And of course, we are going to test that this DTO, in the success case, this DTO returns the correct value. So basically, we have, as usual, success case for the test and several fails, so unsuccess, so where we test that the code is robust enough. So let's look at the test. Now we are not going to use mocks. So since we are not going to use mocks, we need to create the objects. So it's a little bit more of work. So we cannot mock them. We really need to create real objects to connect. So in that sense, this Spock test superclass helps because we can implement there some auxiliary methods that basically do this, and we can use them here. Okay. For instance, I want to create activity DTO, and in all my tests, a lot of times I want to create activity DTO. So actually, we implemented a method here that basically creates activities DTOs. Okay, and I can reuse them. Okay, and you'll find here a couple of methods that you can reuse, and actually in your project you can add more methods if you feel it necessary to do. Another thing that is relevant is that we are going to invoke services. So if you see in our test, what we are going to test is the service invokes this. This is what you want to test, right? The service invokes the activity service class invokes the register activity. But this activity service is defined there. And how is it defined? Through dependency injection. So basically, we don't have an explicit and allow the system to define what is the instance. But in the case of the tests, I need to say explicitly which instance we are going to use. That's why, and this is really important because sometimes we forget to put it there and tests start failing. We have this bin configuration. So you need to define the configuration of the tests. And the configuration of the tests is where we set up, so that's the factory, that actually set up the instances that I auto-wired. So if I come to bin configuration, we'll see there a bin where I create an instance of activity service when I invoke activity service. So that's ways. So, and if you add new services, you need to add them here, and in your tests you need to put these in the configuration of the test, in the test configuration. So this is pretty much what you need to do for setup, and then the test is not that complex. Okay, it can become complex because you need to create all these objects around, but now look, you need to talk, you cannot just mock an institution. You need actually to get a real institution. Fortunately, we have already a service that gives me a demo institution. So that's okay. I can use this. And we have also a service that gives me a demo member. so I can get institutions and members there. So I can use these a lot in my tests at the level service, because at the object, at the domain model layer testing, I just use mocks, okay? And of course, I need to create a team, because I'm going to use teams, and I really need to create. It's not a mock anymore, so I need to save the team in the database explicitly. And now, let's look at the test. So the test, I create an array of teams where I put this team, in this case a team DTO. It has to do with what is invoked there, because this activity DTO contains a list of team DTOs that the register method expects. I create this DTO with this auxiliary method I've shown you, and then I invoke my service. And I expect in the result that the DTO that is returned, so the DTO that is returned is this one, right? This one contains all the information. And I can also go to the database, and so the activity repository, and try to find all and see how many there are there. So find all is one of these methods that are predefined, as I told you, in the repository. You don't need to write the SQL for it. So basically it's a select all, and you see that there's one there. And then you can just get it and use this find by ID, okay? And you check the information. So that's the success case, and you verify that everything is okay. Now, the part where you try to see what happens if you insert wrong inputs. So in your case, you are going to test that part of the code to check that you really get the exceptions, okay? And so we use the same. So use a where, and you do variations of name, member ID, okay, team ID. So these members IDs and teams IDs are going to be used to search in the database. So I explicitly put them null values, or also I can put them values that do not exist, and I expect this to return. So look at these variables. So member ID is there, team ID is there, okay? A final note that you may find, this may happen to you, is that these tables, actually this is meta code, in the sense that actually the code that runs is not this anymore. So there's a pre-processing in Spock that reads these tables and creates one test for each line. This means that only static values should be here, because when you do it, the test didn't start executing. So if you need to return something that is built here, the only way to do it is have what we have done here. You define these methods, you define a constant, you put the constant there, okay? And then in the methods, basically what you do is that you basically you just return the value. In this case, for instance, you return the member ID. This member was created during the execution. Okay, so is not constant. So it doesn't exist during this pre-processing phase of the test. Okay, and that's it. So that's as you see, is a smaller set of tests to test the service.